The moment the lights dimmed on the AGT stage and the announcement echoed across the studio, "Next up, a 10-year-old boy from Manchester." Nobody expected that the smallest contestant of the night would unleash one of the most explosive Elvis impressions the show had ever witnessed. The boy, introduced as Little Manchester, stepped onto the stage wearing a simple white suit with a gold trim, clearly handmade, clearly imperfect, but carrying the raw bravery of a kid who had nothing but heart. The audience whispered, exchanged glances, and wondered if such a tiny performer could even fill the room with sound. When he nervously glanced toward the judges, Simon Cowell, named here as Simon Sheffield, looked back at him with his trademark, unimpressed stare, arms crossed, eyebrows raised, already convinced the kid would crumble under pressure. Little Manchester's hands trembled slightly as the music queued up, but the moment he gripped the mic and released that first deep, velvety note, the kind only Elvis fans recognize instantly, the entire studio froze in shock. Even the audience members from Bristol, Liverpool, and Cambridge who had spent the whole evening cheering casually suddenly leaned forward as if pulled by a magnet. His voice carried an unexpected maturity, thick with that classic Presley warmth, yet touched by youthful sincerity. Simon Sheffield's unimpressed expression shifted only slightly, as if he couldn't decide whether to accept the possibility of being impressed or to force his trademark poker face to stay intact. But the boy didn't rely on approval. He powered forward with more confidence, bringing in sharp hip movements that paid tribute to Elvis without copying him completely. Every time he hit a strong note, the crowd from Oxford and Newcastle erupted louder, drowning out the earlier doubts. Still, Simon Sheffield's reaction remained stiff, pretending to look bored, pretending the kid wasn't shaking the stage the way only rare talents do. The boy sang harder, danced harder, poured everything he had into the performance, and without even realizing it, he started pushing the energy of the entire room upward. And when he reached the chorus, the audience surged to their feet as if a shockwave rolled through them, completely unable to stay seated. The atmosphere ignited into a fireball of cheers while Simon Sheffield, still trying to hold on to his unreadable expression, sat back in his chair refusing to jump like the others. But his eyes widened, just enough to betray him. Just enough to prove the kid from Manchester had done the impossible. He made the judges, the crowd, and even the critics from every corner of Britain feel something electric, something iconic, something Elvis-level powerful. By the time Little Manchester hit the second verse, the studio atmosphere transformed from casual excitement into full-blown eruption. Audience members shouted the names of their cities, Leeds, Brighton, Derby, Norwich, as if they were sending their energy directly into the boy on stage. But the real drama unfolded at the judges' table. Simon Sheffield, notorious for folding under pressure when confronted with undeniably powerful talent, tried desperately to hold on to his reputation of skepticism. He leaned back in his chair, shifted uncomfortably, and even adjusted his microphone as if trying to distract himself from the fact that he was witnessing something spectacular. Meanwhile, Judge Birmingham and Judge Cardiff were already rising halfway out of their seats, unable to believe that a kid barely tall enough to see over the desk could summon a voice that felt like it had traveled through decades of music history. At the bridge of the song, Little Manchester's voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the raw emotional weight he was pushing through the words. Instead of faltering, he leaned into it, turned it into a stylistic edge that made the performance feel human and alive. That crack broke the last layer of tension in the room, causing the audience to erupt again, this time even louder. Judge Birmingham stood fully upright, hands on her head, pacing in disbelief. Judge Cardiff slammed his hand on the desk, laughing from pure shock. But Simon Sheffield? He sank deeper into his chair, glaring at the stage with the look of a man who didn't want to admit that a young boy from Manchester had just shaken his entire judging philosophy. People from Sheffield, Plymouth, and Nottingham screamed so loudly that the studio microphones trembled. Every camera operator scrambled to capture every angle of the chaos. The fans near the front row jumped as if they were at a rock concert instead of a talent show. Even backstage, contestants waiting for their own performances peeked through curtains, jaws dropped, realizing this kid might have just changed the entire night's outcome. As Little Manchester held the final note longer than anyone expected, longer than anyone thought a 10-year-old's lungs were capable of, the entire building felt like it stopped breathing. The moment the music cut off, the judges' panel exploded upward, all except Simon Sheffield, who clung stubbornly to his seat. But his face said what his posture refused to admit: he had just witnessed a performance he would remember long after the show ended. He could hide his reaction, but the world had already seen the truth. When Little Manchester finished and lowered the microphone with both hands shaking from the rush of adrenaline, the stage lights bathed him in a golden glow like a cinematic spotlight. The audience, now fully standing, roared the names of cities: London, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Belfast, as if the entire United Kingdom had united in a single voice to celebrate the boy. Judge Birmingham leaned forward, speechless for a moment before letting out a high-pitched scream of excitement. Judge Cardiff clapped so hard his palms turned red. But the real tension came from Simon Sheffield, who still, unbelievably, sat stone-faced. His refusal to stand was no longer skepticism, it was something closer to disbelief mixed with pride he didn't want to show. Little Manchester waited, breathless, not sure if he should look proud or nervous. The audience chanted his name in waves, echoing like a stadium crowd. People from Leicester, Sunderland, Portsmouth, and Reading shouted for him as though he were a hometown hero. Simon finally leaned toward his microphone, cleared his throat, and prepared to speak, but the crowd booed him lightly, knowing he was about to do the Simon Sheffield thing: criticize brilliance just to maintain control. But even he couldn't deny what had just happened. His voice cracked slightly as he began, "Well, Manchester," and that alone made the audience gasp. He paused, struggled, then continued, "I didn't expect that. Honestly." The crowd roared with laughter because everyone knew that was Simon Sheffield's version of admitting he had been blown away. But he wasn't done deflecting, he added, "You're 10 years old. 10. I don't know whether I'm impressed or confused." Judge Birmingham rolled her eyes dramatically. Judge Cardiff pointed at Simon and shouted, "Oh, come on, Sheffield. Stand up. The kid deserves it." The crowd chanted, "Stand up. Stand up." But Simon held firm, refusing to rise, refusing to break his stubborn streak. And yet, even while seated, his face betrayed every emotion he tried to hide. He looked at the boy with the kind of reluctant admiration he only gave to performers who exceeded every expectation. Little Manchester grinned shyly, realizing he had won the crowd, won the stage, and, deep down, won over Simon Sheffield even if Simon refused to admit it publicly. As the applause roared, as British cities echoed across the room, and as Judge Cardiff slammed the golden buzzer with fireworks spraying above the stage, Little Manchester fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon still sat in his chair, but the tiny smirk on his face told the whole world the truth: the boy had done something extraordinary, something unforgettable, something powerful enough to shake even the coldest judge on the panel. And in that moment, the AGT stage belonged entirely to the 10-year-old Elvis from Manchester.